Chapter 4. That next week was so hot, horses were fainting up and down Main Street. By Thursday, the temperature inside the diner was 102 degrees, but Chet didn't mind the heat. Something amazing had happened that day. The guys had invited Chet to go swimming with them at the creek. All week, they'd been coming into the diner earlier and then sticking around even after they'd wolfed down their donuts. "You ever seen the Pacific Ocean?" Sid had asked one day. "Sure," Chet said. "What's it look like?" Monty asked. Chet took a minute to picture it. He didn't want to disappoint the guys. A little bluer than the Atlantic, waves a little bit bigger maybe, but otherwise just lots of water and waves. They all seemed satisfied. "How about the Mississippi River?" Dewey had asked the next day. "You seen that too?" Chet told him that it was wide and muddy. "I was on a steamboat that got stuck in the mud," Chet said. "We had to stay there for a whole day and night." That impressed them all. "You're the luckiest kid I know," Sid pronounced. "Me?" Chet said. "Sure," Monty said. "To see all those places?" "I don't know," Chet said. "I hate moving around so much." Hearing those words startled Chet. He felt that way, but he had never really said it out loud, not even to Uncle Jerry. He hoped the guys didn't think that he was belly aching. "Hey, why don't you ever come down to the creek?" Sid said. "We're always looking for you there," Monty said. Chet tried to hide his surprise. "It's not the Pacific Ocean," Dewey said, "but it's pretty nice." "I hear it's better than the Pacific," Chet said. The guys all laughed. "Why don't you come today?" Sid said. And of course, Chet said he would meet them after work. Uncle Jerry drew Chet a little map so that he wouldn't get lost, a dotted line to the end of Main Street and then behind the tile factory, down a steep hill and across a path. Chet made it to the bottom of the hill, and for a second he thought he was lost. He couldn't see the creek, just tall golden grass, but then he could hear shouts and splashing. He walked through the grass and into a clearing. The guys' dusty trousers and shirts were laid across some low branches. 3 pairs of scuffed-up boots were tumbled across the dirt, and just beyond there was the creek. The guys were right. It wasn't much, maybe 20 feet across. He couldn't tell if it was deep enough to dive, but it was nice and shady, and at that moment there was no place on earth Chet would rather be. "Hurry up," Dewey shouted. "The water's perfect." Chet threw his clothes off and climbed up onto the broken-down dock. "Jump," Sid said. With a running leap, Chet launched himself into the air. Whoosh! The cool water rose up around him. All of his worries washed away. The guys gathered around him. Dewey threw a pink rubber ball high into the air. "Chet, catch," he said. Chet squinted up into the sun and miraculously caught the ball. "Here," Sid said, jumping up and waving his hands. Chet threw the ball straight enough like Uncle Jerry had taught him. Sid made a clean catch. They played ball, then they took turns jumping off the dock and chasing each other back and forth across the creek. When they got tired of swimming, they sat on the bank under a big elm tree. Dewey's mother had packed him 3 molasses cookies, and the guys fought over who could share with Chet. "So," Sid said, "you like it here okay?" "The creek's nice," said Chet with a mouthful of cookie. "No, Elm Hills," Monty said. "You think you'll be staying a while?" said Dewey. Chet swallowed hard. Just the day before, he'd gotten a letter from Mama. "We have a nice apartment with a room just for you," she wrote. "I think Papa's going to have some good luck this time." "I hope," he said. The guys all nodded. "Minnie Martson's sweet on you," Dewey said. "Really?" Chet squeaked. "Sure," Monty said, sounding a little jealous. "She told my sister." They sat there a while talking about Minnie and Uncle Jerry's no-hitter in the high school finals of 1908. Then Sid stood up and dove back into the water. They all followed him. Sid went swimming down the creek, and Chet played ball with Dewey and Monty. He and Monty tossed the ball back and forth a few times. "Dewey!" Chet called, ready to throw the ball. But Dewey didn't look at him. He was looking at something downstream. He had a very strange look on his face. And then Chet saw it too, a gray triangle sticking up through the water, heading right for Dewey. "What was that?" "It looked like the fin of a giant fish." "Was it?" He shook his head. His eyes were playing tricks on him. A shark in the creek was impossible. He even tried to laugh. His mind must be messed up because of the captain's story. But the fin was getting closer to Dewey. Faster, faster, closer and closer. "Dewey!" Chet shouted. But it was too late. There was a huge splash, and then Dewey disappeared. Chapter 5. Chet ran screaming out of the water. "Dewey! Dewey!" He made it to the bank and searched the water for Monty and Sid, but they were gone too. They'd been eaten. Chet was the only one left. He was about to run up Main Street for help, but then Dewey came up sputtering. "You idiot," Dewey said, looking around. "You kept me under too long. That wasn't the plan." Who was Dewey talking to? And what did he mean about a plan? Sid came up out of the water, grasping for breath. Where was the shark? And why was Sid laughing? We got you, Sid shouted at Chet. He held something up, a chipped gray tile, the fin. Chet's head started to spin. He felt like he might throw up. They'd tricked him. Monty was standing on the bank on the other side of the creek. I can't believe you fell for that, he laughed. Chet couldn't talk. His heart seemed to be stuck in his throat. Why would they do that? You should have heard yourself, Monty shouted. You screamed so loud, your mama probably heard you all the way from California. Chet's cheeks were bright red. His hands were shaking. How could he have thought these guys wanted to be his friends? They just wanted someone to pick on, and that was the only reason they invited him to come to the creek. Chet grabbed his clothes and got dressed. Hey, Sid shouted, don't be sore. They all scrambled out of the water and ran over to him. We were just joking with you. We didn't mean to scare you so bad. We always do pranks. But Chet wasn't listening. His heart was pounding and his cheeks burned. He laced up his boots, stood up, and stormed away.